Lillahi ta'ala. All right, we are continuing now in Al-Bayquniyyah, this beginner's poem in Mustalah, Hadith terminology. We got up to the 21st line. He says on the 21st line, starting from there. وَمَا يُخَالِفْ ثِقَةٌ بِهِ الْمَلَأ فَالشَّاذُ وَالْمَقْلُوبُ قِسْمَانِ تَلَا وَمَا يُخَالِفْ ثِقَةٌ بِهِ الْمَلَأ فَالشَّاذُ وَالْمَقْلُوبُ قِسْمَانِ تَلَا. On this 21st, or in this 21st line, the author mentions two different types of hadith. The first one he mentioned was the shadh, the irregular hadith or the anomalous hadith. We talked about that last time, and I'll remind you briefly. And the second one he mentioned on this line is the maqloob. As for the first one, the shadh, he told us what it is. He says, وَمَا يُخَالِفْ ثِقَةٌ بِهِ الْمَلَأ, anything in which a trustworthy narrator opposes a group, فَشَاذ, then that's irregular. It means he's trustworthy and also he's accurate. And so he is a reliable narrator. And we can take what he reports. But we found from this reliable, trustworthy, accurate reporter a report that is contrary to that of a group of reporters. And it is unlikely that this group of reporters is wrong and he's right. And keeping in mind here, the meaning of this talk is that we cannot put the reports together. Because as long as you can put the reports together, it's obligatory to do so. Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah does not reject any authentic hadith. And we want any and every authentic hadith there is. So if we did find two hadiths that seem to go against each other, but we're able to merge them, then we are going to merge them as much as we can. I gave you the example of the hadiths and the issue of bid'ah last time. Didn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, وَكُلُّ بِدْعَةٍ ضَلَالَةٍ, every innovation is misguidance? Yes, this is authentically reported from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Do we want this hadith? Yes. But didn't the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also say, مَنْ سَنَّ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ سُنَّةً حَسَنَةً فَلَهُ أَجْرُهَا, whoever paves a good path in Islam shall have its reward. Whoever starts a good way in Islam shall have its reward. This is also authentically reported from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So do we want this hadith? Yeah, we want it too. Are these two hadiths contradicting each other? No, they're not. Although at first glance one might imagine they are. Because if every innovation is misguidance, then how would it be possible for someone to pave a good path in Islam? A path that wasn't already paved, that is. But there is a way for a person to pave a good path in Islam, a path that was not paved before. And that's because the good innovations are not included in the hadith that every innovation is misguidance. Rather, that hadith is particularly about bad innovations only. Or it means most of the innovations are misguidance. Therefore, there's no contradiction between these two hadiths. We merged them. Jama'na baynahuma. We merged them. This is what you do, what the scholars do with two reports that seem to be conflicting with each other. But if they found that they are unable to merge these reports, then we look. What's the issue here? The issue is what we're talking about now is both of these reports are coming from reliable sources. So, but we can't put them together. And it's not the Prophet who contradicts himself, alayhi salatu wassalam. So then it must be that there's a mistake somewhere. Not from the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wassalam. So the scholars are going to use their various ways of preponderance to give weight to one hadith over the other one. The one that is deemed weighty is called mahfuz, preserved or kept. I have it written here. And the one that is outweighed is called shadh, irregular, or anomalous. So that's what the author mentioned for us. He said, anything by which a thiqah, a reliable, trustworthy narrator who's accurate, opposes a group, he means, in such a way that we cannot put those reports together. Fashad, then it's irregular. But his talk is summarized here, because the way he said it might give you the impression that a shadh report is a report when a trustworthy narrator says something contrary to a group. And no, that's the group is not a condition. Could be a narrator versus a narrator. Trustworthy narrator versus trustworthy narrator. Question, you said provided that group all is reliable, accurate, and trustworthy, right? I don't recall learning details about the group. That the meaning of this talk is that each individual in the group is trustworthy. And that rather what I know is that it's the fact that they are a group, they're all saying one thing. A group is all saying one thing versus an individual saying something else. And so putting the report of this group against this individual, it's weightier, it's more likely that the group is correct. It's more likely that the group is correct. Okay, but what if we put a narrator against a narrator? How would we give weight to one narrator over the other? Because could be that one narrator is ahfaz, means has more memory, or al-babt means more accurate. So then we're going to take the narration of the one who is more accurate, or the one who has greater memory. So that's clear. Or, as the scholar said, any other ways of preponderance, or by any other ways of preponderance. What other ways of preponderance are there? If Allah enables us to go through Alfiyatul Iraqi, we'll see. First, though, we need to complete this Bayquniyyah poem, which we're just going over the metin. And maybe after that, we're going to read Sharh, maybe, or maybe we'll jump right to Iraqi. I'll see how I feel. So then the author went on, he said, وَالْمَقْلُوبُ قِسْمَانِ تَلَا. And the maqlub, the reversed or flipped narration. is of two divisions, and it follows. Tala, it follows. The meaning of it follows here, that's filler. Filler to fill up the rest of the line because the poet has to stay on beat. So he had to put something there. So he put the word tala. Tala means it came. It followed, rather. Tala means it followed. What's it? It is the maqlub. The maqlub followed. Followed what? The maqlub followed the shadh. Why? Because the author mentioned it afterwards. So it followed it. Not for any necessary sequence here, but just because this is what the author wrote. So he composed a poetry, he composed a poem for the hadith science, for the beginners in the hadith science like ourselves. And so he had to list the hadith types. So is there a sequence they should be in? There's a reasonable sequence for these types of hadith, but not necessary. You saw what the author did. How he mentioned the hadith attributed to the Prophet, marfu'. Then he mentioned hadith attributed to a tabi'i, or a report, not hadith, a report attributed to a tabi'i, that's called maqtu'. And then after several lines, he mentioned a report attributed to a companion, mawquf. So it was not in order there. And, excuse me, you also saw what the author did, how he mentioned the muttasil hadith with connected chain. Then he mentioned the musnad, a hadith with a connected chain that's attributed to the Prophet. He mentioned the marfu', a hadith that's attributed to the Prophet. Then he mentioned the musnad, a hadith that's attributed to the Prophet with a continuous chain. Then he mentioned the muttasil, a hadith with a continuous chain. So had he just flipped those, first mention marfu', hadith attributed to the Prophet. Then mention muttasil, a hadith with a continuous chain. Then mention musnad, a hadith attributed to the Prophet with a continuous chain. Then would have had nice sequence, nice arrangement there mentally, but it's not necessary. You see, we survived, we got until here, and we're understanding the material. So when he said tala, it followed. It followed merely because that's what the author mentioned and not because there's any necessary sequence here. So he mentioned the shadh, the irregular report. And irregular means what? Irregular means that on its own merits, it's authentic. We wouldn't have known that it's not authentic had we not found another report that it cannot combine with. And the other report was more reliable, so we took that one. Otherwise, we would have kept that one that's irregular. That's why it's irregular. Yani, take note of the meanings of these words here. The reason it's irregular, that's why. And then after the irregular report, he mentioned the maqlub, the reversed or the flipped report. And he said, qismani, it's two divisions. And then he said, to fill up the rest of the line, tala, it followed. Followed the shadh in the poem. Then he explained, ibdalu rawin ma bi rawin qismu. Ibdalu rawin ma bi rawin qismu. وقلب إسناد لمتن قسم. He said, replacing any narrator for another is one division of maqlub, flipped narration. And mixing and matching the texts and the chains is another division. What does this mean? So this means that sometimes a narrator has a hadith with a chain. And he would deliberately take someone out of the chain and then put in his place someone else. And this other one that he puts in the chain is someone who lived at the time of the one that he took out of the chain. And then it would look like this is a unique report. Someone who doesn't know, he would come across this report. Now, when we say someone who doesn't know, now we're talking about people who are busy with hadith science, really, real hadiths, not page flippers here. Because who's the one who's going to recognize that there's something in the chain in the first place? It's not going to be a page flipper. The one who's going to recognize that there's something in the chain is going to be someone who really studied. He knows the biographies of the narrators. He knows the different narrators, many, many narrators. So that because he has background knowledge of this issue, he'll come across the report and he'll say, I'm Fulan from Fulan? From Fulan? What? So it's unique. And if he looks, he'll say, wow, for example, he'd say, for example, I didn't know that Fulan heard from Fulan. Well, they did live at the same time. Wow, I've got a unique report here. And really what happened was somebody did that on purpose just so that it would be thought that he had a unique report. May Allah protect us from being petty. I mean, some petty things like that would motivate a person to do things. So that's one type of maqlub. And then there's another type. The type when the hadith scholars would deliberately take the chain of one hadith and put it with the text of another hadith to test a scholar, to test the muhaddith. That's what happened to Al-Bukhari when he came to Baghdad, and its scholars wanted to test him because this one, he became famous throughout the land. Al-Bukhari. It's said that this guy's a big deal. Let's see how big of a deal he is. So they got 10 men. And each man got 10 hadiths. So that's a total of 100 hadiths. And they mixed these 100 hadiths with their chains. They shuffled the texts and the chains so that a hadith would not have its proper chain. Then the people came. Yani, the scholars of hadith came, and also the laymen came, so that they could participate, yani be witness to the event and the arrival of Al-Bukhari, the famous Bukhari. So the first man started with this hadith. He said, do you know this hadith from so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said such and such? So Al-Bukhari said, La a'rifuh, I do not know it. And then he told him, how about this one? From so-and-so, from so-and-so, from so-and-so, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said such and such. So Al-Bukhari said, La a'rifuh, I don't know it. And he did not say more than that. for 100 hadiths. Every single one of those 100 hadiths, he said, La arifu, I do not know it. And so the audience, the layman in the audience, they were like, this is Bukhari? He don't even know 100 hadiths. Imagine, you might have been, if you were there, you might have been just a layman and say, I know that hadith. But you don't know the chains though. So you don't even know what's going on there. But these scholars, they knew just from that. They were looking at each other saying, Fahim al-Rajul, the man understands. Yani, he is indeed a great scholar. We know just by the fact that he said, I do not know it 100 times, we know that he is a great scholar. And then what did Al-Bukhari do? Then he turned to the first one and he said to him, as for this hadith, and he gave him the first chain that the first man gave him. And then he put it with its proper hadith. Then he gave the first man the second chain that he gave him and put it the first with the correct hadith. And then he gave him the third chain that he gave him and put it with the correct hadith. And he did that for 100 hadiths in the same order. The same order that they presented those chains to him, he presented those chains back to them, but he put the proper hadith with the chain. When that happened, then everyone knew that Al-Bukhari was the man. Even the layman. And there's other stories like that. There's a story about one scholar was said about him that he used to narrate without a book. So some of the scholars became suspicious of him. They said, either this man is a proficient expert, or he is a scoundrel, a liar. So they wanted to test it. So they sent someone with a book full of mistakes in the hadiths. So then he sat with him, and the sheikh, in the story, he didn't have a book. So he told him, read what you have. So he started reading. So every time he would say something wrong, the sheikh would correct it. And then he said, no, not like that. Then, no, not like that. Then he made so many mistakes, he said, give me your book. So he took his book, he started looking through it, and then he just corrected all the mistakes in the book and then gave it back to him. So that's how those hadith scholars are. This religion is flawless, and this religion is invincible, and it is preserved. The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is preserved. There was a fabricator, a person who was going to be executed, in fact, not executed for fabricating. He was going to be executed, and it happens, he thought that he could stall. When they were going to execute him, he said, I have fabricated so many hadiths, like a big number. He said, I fabricated so many hadiths and they got spread. So you're not going to know what they are unless I tell you. The scholars, they said, we live for this. Means they say, don't worry. Have no fear. We don't need to keep you alive in order to discover your fabrications. Pardon me, please. I'm still having some allergies here. So that's the maqlub. And there's still more to talk about there, but we just want to stick close to the text and unravel its words. Any question? Maqlub with a qaf. Maqlub. Yeah. Qaf lam ba. From the word qalb, that means flipping. Qalb. Like the heart is qalb. Maqlub. Yes. Then the author says, والفرد ما قيدته بثقتي والفرد ما قيدته بثقتي مستفعل 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 والفرد ما قيدته بثقتي أو جمع أو قصر على روايتي والفرد ما قيدته بثقتي أو جمع أو قصر على روايتي. He says the unique report, the fard, it is a report that you have, yani you as a reporter, that you have restricted to a trustworthy one, or you restricted it to a group, or hold on. Oh, Qasrin. Bismillah. 1 second, please. Okay. Oh, Qasrin ala riwayati. Or you restricted it to a narration. So just to translate his words first. Yani, so he says, وَالْفَرْدُ مَا قَيَّدْتَهُ بِثِقَتِي. The unique report, the fard, is something that you have restricted it to a trustworthy one, or أو جمع, or to a group, أو قصر على روايتي, or you restricted it to a particular narration. What does this mean? It means there's a type of report called fard al-fard. So fard means unique. And what makes a report unique? Well, it can be unique in different ways. So it could be of all the people who narrated a report, there could be a report has many narrations, and only one trustworthy person is in all those reports. Maybe there's only one report through the route of trustworthy person, yani one trustworthy person narrating through all out of all of these reports, only one of them comes from a trustworthy person. So then it's fard, yani it's unique, yani it would be said it would be said, how would they say it? They would say, by saying, no one trustworthy narrated this but Fulan. They would say, no trustworthy one narrated this report but Fulan. So then it's a fard report because of its being unique to him. Or you would say, no one narrated this but the people of Basra. Or no one narrated this but the village of so-and-so. So that's what it means. أو جمع قيدته بثقتي أو جمع. It's a report that you are restricting to a trustworthy individual, meaning of all of its narrators, none of them were trustworthy but one. So it was fard in regards to him. Or of all the towns, no town narrated this hadith but the people of this town. So then it would be fard in this regard, unique to this town. Or it could be that someone has a report narrated from many individuals. Many people narrated from him. Not narrated from him. The report is narrated. A report is narrated through many routes. But it could be that no one narrated it through Fulan except Fulan. No one narrated this report through Fulan except Fulan. Although there's other versions, other branches for this report. There are other branches for this report. We can trace this report back through so many routes. But as for coming from so and so, like to say no one reported this from Imam Malik but Fulan. Fulan's the only one who reported this report from Imam Malik. So then it would be fard in regards to him here. So that's the meaning of fard hadith, fard. Question: all the narrators in that unique report would be trustworthy? No, not necessarily. We're not, when it comes to unique report, we're not talking about trustworthy or not in reality. We're not talking about authentic or not. We're talking about some unique aspect to this report in some way or another. There's something in this report that's unique. Maybe unique to Fulan in some way. No one reported this from Fulan but Fulan. Right there is unique. No town reported this but such and such town. Here is unique in this way. Yes, this is not about being trustworthy or not. This is not about being reliable or not. We talk about it being fard. We're not talking about whether it's authentic or not. But when we're talking about it being fard, we are talking about comparing narrations. We're definitely talking about comparing narrations. Because how are you going to know it's unique in some way or another unless you compared it to the other narrations? So then, in order to be involved in this issue here, to talk about this issue here, you'd have to be knowledgeable, you'd have to have studied, you know what's in the books, so that you can make a proper assessment and say, this is unique to Fulan. This is unique in this way or unique in that way, out of all of its comparable renditions. So then also, you're not going to be a page flipper. You won't be able to do something like that if you're a page flipper. And then the author says, we're on line 24 here. وَمَا بِعِلَّةٍ غُمُوضٍ أَوْ خَفَى مُعَلَّلٌ عِنْدَهُمْ قَدْ عُرِفَا وَمَا بِعِلَّةٍ غُمُوضٍ أَوْ خَفَى مُعَلَّلٌ عِنْدَهُمْ قَدْ عُرِفَا. And anything that has a defect, obscure or hidden, then it is defective according to them. It is known. So right here also when he says قَدْ عُرِفَا, it is known. What's that? That's filler. He needs to complete the line. So he added some words there just to fill the line up. Takmilatan lil bayt, to complete the line. He says anything that is defective, wama bi'illatin, anything that has a defect, ghumudin, obscure, aw khafa, or hidden, then it's mu'allal. So what does this mean here? He means that when are we going to call a hadith defective? A defective hadith. We're going to call it a defective hadith when the defect is not clear. When the defect is not clear. Why? Because if the defect is clear, then we're going to call that hadith by the name of its defect. So if, for example, the defect is that someone's missing from the chain, then this is called munqati'. then we're going to call it munqati'. We're not going to call it defective. It is defective. It is defective, but we're not going to call it defective. And when I say someone's missing from the chain, I mean clearly, obviously. I meant obviously missing from the chain, not obscurely. Then we're going to not call it mu'allal, we're going to call it munqati'. So when we're going to call it mu'allal, defective, we're going to call it that when it required a skilled hafiz, a skilled expert to discover what's wrong with it. That's when we're going to call it mu'allal. The skilled expert, he had to delve into this issue to find what's wrong with it. So he found what's wrong with it, and maybe it is someone's missing from the chain. But that was obscure, though. When the defect is an obscure one that required an expert, a high expert, a headmaster, then they're going to call it mu'allal, defective. So that's why he said, وَمَا بِعِلَّةٍ غُمُوضٍ أَوْ خَفَى. Anything that has a defect, obscure or hidden. So by saying obscure or hidden, that's a qualifier. By this qualifier, we are excluding what has the defect obvious and clear. If it has defect obvious and clear, it's going to have a different name. Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. We'll stop there. Any question? So we are talking about the chain of narration, right? Concerning the defect, could be in the text or the chain. This obscure hidden defect could be in the text or the chain. Well, you said, do I recall an example? I don't recall an example, but they have examples in the shuruh. Let me see. Let me see if he has one for us really quick here. Al-maqlubu. What are we looking for? We're looking for mu'allal. معلل قد عرف أفاد العراقي أن حد المعلل حديث فيه أسباب خفية طرأت عليه فأثرت فيه. قال الحافظ وأحسن منه أن يقال هو حديث ظاهره السلامة اطلع فيه بعد التفتيش اطلع فيه بعد التفتيش على قادح. Here. That's one thing. Hafiz ibn Hajar defined the defective hadith. He said, هو حديث ظاهره السلامة. It's a hadith that appears to be sound. اطلع فيه بعد التفتيش على قادح, but after research it was found to be defective. مثاله, an example. حديث ابن جريج في الترمذي وغيره. The hadith of Ibn Jurayj in At-Tirmidhi and in the book of At-Tirmidhi and others, عن موسى ibn عقبة, from the route of Musa, son of Uqbah. عن سهيل ibn Abi Salih, from Suhail ibn Abi Salih. عن أبيه, from his father. عن أبي هريرة مرفوعا, from Abu Hurairah, as a prophetic hadith. من جلس مجلسا فكثر فيه لغطه فقال قبل أن يقوم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك الحديث. Okay, this is a case where it's in the chain. You're looking for one where it's in the hadith, the text of the hadith itself. وعلة المتن الجارحة القادحة فيه كحديث نفي قراءة البسملة في الصلاة المروي عن أنس إذ ظن بعض رواته حين سمع قول قول أنس صليت خلف النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأبي بكر وعمر وعثمان فكانوا يستفتحون بالحمد لله رب العالمين نفي البسملة بذلك الحديث فنقله مصرحا بما ظنه فقال عقب ذلك فلم يكونوا يستفتحون القراءة ببسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فصار بذلك حديثا مرفوعا والراوي له مخطئ في ظنه كما نقله ابن عبد البر etc. And he has more talk there. So, inshallah, that's clear for you without me translating all that right now, just to answer the brother's question. We're going to come back to these examples. You notice I haven't been giving you examples from the hadiths. I'm actually surprised. This is like the first time out of all the hadith types we covered that someone asked me for an example. Which that's fine, really, because I wasn't planning to give examples yet. I just wanted to go through the metin first. But now someone asked me for an example, so I gave an example. But I didn't really explain the example all the way because I didn't translate everything I just said right now. And I'm not going to now. Ameen wa iyyakum. Any other question?